going? So today what I want to talk to you about is making a part 2 video. I previously made a video where I talked about how Christianity tries to address the afterlife, or provide people with the comfort of reassurances of knowing that, hey, when you die, that's not the end. There's an afterlife and you don't have to fear death. And so that was in my part 1. So this is my part 2 video on this idea. And in this video, what I want to discuss is how Christians put all their, they say that things in this life don't matter. What matters is, basically kind of paying it forward, so to speak. That they're storing up all their treasures in heaven, and everything that they do, they need to be thinking about. Their reward is in heaven, so you can sacrifice here on earth and not have your best life now, and you just need to not worry about having the riches of this life, and all that stuff is just worthless, and you're gonna die anyways. But what really matters is keeping your eye on the prize and sort of staying focused on pleasing God in heaven, so that when you can get to heaven, you can get all A's on your report card from God. That kind of a thing. I know it sounds funny, but that's kind of the analogy I can think of at the moment. But so that sort of has always caused heartburn for me, because it's like you miss the trees through the forest. You miss much of what life has to offer because you're so heaven preoccupied. And I think this kind of plagues many Christians. I know from when I was in Christianity that at least this way of thinking was very prevalent in my mind, and don't worry about the things of this life because they don't really matter. Set your eyes upon higher things in heaven. And this is sort of the kind of mantra, and this is the renewing of your mind and changing your thinking to focus yourself more on, don't worry about what you may be missing out in this life, because this life doesn't matter. What really matters is when you get to heaven. That's when the party really begins. That's when you're really going to get your just rewards for being a faithful and loyal servant to God. And because this exists not only in Christianity, it exists in other religions as well. At least I know with Islam, they talk about if they could die martyred, and they get so many virgins, and all this is in the Quran. And I've not gone in and read it 100% myself, verified this myself, though I've heard this, and I would tend to think that this is true. Maybe it is true. Maybe somebody can post below a comment that says where it actually is true and where it says that in there. I'm sure I could Google it real quick, but I don't have that at my fingertips, so just take my word for it at the moment, and then when you get a chance to look it up, you can check it out. But the point being is just that other religions, Christianity, have this idea that you should basically become I don't want to say some religions believe in becoming a martyr, and I think there were martyrs for Christ throughout ancient times and throughout history. And so that's sort of the way of thinking that they want people to embrace, is that it doesn't matter what you're missing out in this life. Just set your eyes on the prize, so to speak, and focus on doing good for the kingdom of God. And that's all you need to be preoccupied with. That's all you need to focus. Yes, you still need to live your life, but don't. And so that emphasis, that laser focus on Christianity, and focusing on the kingdom of God, and focusing on heaven and everything, and ensuring that everything that you do is so that you can find favor with the Father in heaven and that sort of thing. Again, that's what Christians believe, and so. I just think it's very limited thinking. I think it's very limited way to live, where you kind of miss, like I said, the trees through the forest. You really don't get to really intake or partake of life's full experiences, because the things in this world don't matter, they always say. And how sad, again, if somebody wants to live that way, it's their prerogative. But I feel like it's very limiting and very unfortunate that you would just not try to focus on the here and the now, because that's all we know that we have. I guess is the point of my video, is that with Christianity, you don't know that there's an afterlife. You don't know that any of that. You say, well, you don't know that there isn't. Well, I'm just saying that it seems to me that it'd be far better for people to just live an honest life. And I'm not saying do whatever the hell they want to do, but let's think, in a sense it is that, because you don't know. And so why not just be a good person, live the best life you can, try not to be an asshole, you know what I'm saying, try not to do no harm to others, kind of thing, and let it be, that's it, and don't worry about, just becoming a martyr for Christ and trying to live this perfect life, and I get it. It's kind of a selfish motive, because you want to find favor with God. You want God to accept you, like he's that very scolding parent that you want to find acceptance and love from, or something like that. It's just kind of goofy, and I think that people are selling themselves short. It's very short-sighted. They want to focus everything on, when all you really know that you have for sure is this very moment, is this life right now. And of course, no one knows how long they have, but at least for the time that you do have, that you're among the living and you're here, why not try to make it the best life now that you possibly can? Why not try to have as much fun as you can? Don't live a repressed lifestyle. Like I said, don't have to go ape shit and just and be a terrible person and just do hey, it's me first and the gimmies, and do everything you can to just be a dastardly bastard. I mean, I'm not saying that, but at least live with freedom and authenticness in your life, and just being you, and not having to live with condemnation and worrying about being judged, and that God's going to come down from heaven and ram a big combat boot right up your ass because you fell short of the glory of God, or because it's just again, if people feel better about living the Christian lifestyle, about living a life that's pleasing to God, I mean, that's their business. I mean, whatever. But I'm just saying, you don't know that any of that stuff is true, and we've got evidence that kind of to the contrary that suggests that it's probably not true. So why not just live, honestly, authentically with your life? Be real and just do what you feel you need to do for your life. It's not about rebellion against God. It's not about any of those things. It's just about being a human being and just living. And you say, well, yeah, it's not about submitting to the will of the Lord and submitting to God's authority over your life and this and that. And I'm like, man, it's not about that. I know that many people say, oh, that's exactly what it's about. No, it's not. I just feel like if in our lives, as we live our lives from the time we're born to the time we die, you don't want to live with any regrets. Why live with regret, right? Regrets, whether you're a Christian or not a Christian. I mean, we all tend to have regrets, right? So you want to live with as little regrets as possible. And I just think that having your focus be on heaven and the kingdom of God throughout your entire life, again, if it makes you feel like, if you're one of Mother Teresa, or it makes you feel like, you're a good person, or it clears your conscience, it soothes your conscience, whatever, because maybe you've done some bad things in your prior life, and, you're trying to turn over a new leaf, and you want to find favor with God when you get to heaven to be judged, if that's even true. I mean, okay, whatever, but you don't know that's true. And I guess we're going to do Pascal's wager like we all do and say, well, better to live a good life and get to heaven and be wrong than to live a bad life and get to heaven and be wrong, and then find out you're going to be judged, and oh, sorry, you bastard, now you're going to fry. And that's what we do. Pascal's wager. We all make that choice, and it's an interesting concept. You should check it out. The afterlife. Yeah, I mean, focusing and that's what I think Christians do. They strive to, anyways, and they do see that it's a struggle. I've lived it. I realize how hard it is. But they strive, and they're so preoccupied on the afterlife. They're all preoccupied on what's going to happen when they get to heaven, and not really worrying about enjoying this life now. And I think that's the most important thing, is that we enjoy life now, because that's all we know we have. There may be an afterlife. Heaven can wait. If there is a heaven and you get there, and you find out that because of living an authentic life for you, and trying to live your best life now, and just enjoy the fullness of life without all this, oh, I can't do that, that's sin, I can't go there, I can't do this, I can't do that because it's taboo, it's this or that, living with all that condemnation that oftentimes you find, that guilt and shame that comes from living a life of Christianity. And I know people will say, oh no, but I've lived it. I know from my own personal experience. I can't speak for other Christians, but I think most of them would agree that you do have to live a somewhat repressed lifestyle. You do have to say no, and yes, say no to sin, like say no to drugs. But why not just do the best you can? Don't worry about what happens when you get to heaven, and say, well, yeah, but I get there, and then God's going to be disappointed in me, and then He's going to, this that once saved, always saved concept. So if you accept Jesus into your heart, people can, even in the last hour, people get to go to heaven. Murderous, very awful, despicable people in the last final hour before they are lethally injected or whatever, given the electric chair or something like that, facing the death penalty, they can say a quick prayer and they lived a crappy life all their life, and they get to go to heaven. Is that fair? I don't know. I mean, whatever. That's God makes the rules, right? But my point is just showing that you got two different people. One guy, but see, that's the problem. They say is you don't know when your final time is going to come, so don't wait until the last minute and then be like, okay, let me say a quick prayer. And it's too late. You're dead. And that's the thing that's the scare tactic Christians use, is you don't know. Nobody knows when your appointed time to die is, and so whatever. I mean, I think what it's all about is just living a life that you feel is best for you, and not worrying about heaven and not being preoccupied with what may or may never happen, and if God can't accept you the way that you are, I mean, come on, what kind of loving, compassionate God is he if he can't say, well, I told you what you needed to do to be saved and you didn't do it, so guess what, now you've got a one-way ticket straight to hell. Oh, well, and I get it. I mean, if that's really truly how it is, then okay, I guess we all deserve, get our just rewards, and our reward will not be that, we get eternity in heaven with God. But it's, to me, I think that's the idea. What I wanted to convey in this is that's the carrot that Christianity dangles. It says there's a better life in heaven, and don't worry about the things of this world, because those things do not matter. All that matters is focusing on the kingdom of God, focusing on heaven. And that's it. You don't need to pay attention to anything else. It's just that. So
All set, sir. Have a great day.
So, what do I think about all that? I think, like I said, I think I stated my point. I won't blather on any more about it, but I think that we need to just live our lives for us. And the only thing that we know is we have today. Live for today, live for now. Don't become preoccupied, focused on heaven and worrying about pleasing God. And you say, it's just all about pleasing yourself. That's what you're saying. Well, you don't know God exists. You don't know that heaven exists. Well, you don't know that it doesn't exist. Well, and that's always the counter argument that they want to say. Like, just because of fear tactic, because you fear some sky man that may or may not exist, I don't think, I mean, again, if God does exist, well then, yeah, I guess, if you chose poorly, I guess you're going to suffer for all eternity in hell, and you have your flesh burn, and all the other scare tactics that are used, and to convince people that they should believe in some invisible man that lives in the sky. I don't know. It just seems kind of ridiculous, and seems like what we really ought to do is just live our life for ourselves now, live with what we can see. We don't know that any of those things are true that are in the Bible, and it seems like it's just a far better way to live, is to believe that those things don't really exist, and that we have no evidence to suggest that it does. So let's just live our lives the best way we can, try to do no harm to others, and that's got to be good enough. And if it's not, then, well, maybe he wasn't worth serving in the end after all. Maybe the God wasn't worth your living your entire life devoted for, if he can't be compassionate and understanding and empathetic to understand you just tried to do the best you could do based upon the information that you had available. So, is there an afterlife? I don't know. This is the question, age-old question that's been around since ancient times, and many other cultures, as I said in my part 1 video, have tried to address it, have tried to give people some kind of hope, some sense that that all we do here is not in vain, and that that life is worth living, and I think that it is. I just don't know so much that it's worth living for some enchanted kingdom that may or may not exist in heaven, and none of us will ever know this until we leave from this life to the next. So, could it be real? Yeah, maybe. Who knows? Anyways, thanks for watching the video. See you next time.